Hi, everyone. This is Dan Halsey with United Designers and Southwoods Ecological Design and Ecosystems. I'm really happy again to have another one of our interviews with Sara and Regina from Spain. And we have Alfonso with us from the ERC camp and his other activities in Spain in the Altiplano. We're going to go through our questions and then talk a little bit more about what's going on in his life and his activities. And this is all for the Global Earth Repair Conference. That's in May, first weekend in May, and hoping that you're enjoying our conversations with people around the globe and their views on the questions that we have about climate adaptation, change, and our future. So who's going to introduce Alfonso? Regina.
Yeah. Buenas tardes, Alfonso.
Buenas tardes, Regina.
Estoy muy contenta de verte otra vez, cara a cara. Okay. This is our next guest from Spain. It's Alfonso Chico de Guzman. He was the person who allowed the first ecosystem restoration camp to be in his land, and now he's busy with Albelal. Albelal is an organization that is taking care of the regeneration of the lands in Murcia and Granada in a series of comarcs over there, and he's also, I think, busy together with some other people that he will explain with the Regeneration Academy, his farm. And it's a very interesting person that has a lot of to tell and to offer. So we give you his
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Regina. That was yeah. You see me with very good eyes.
Yes. So yes, and it's been it was wonderful. I've been to Spain a few times and a couple of times to the camp. It's been wonderful. In La Jurena, did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, La Junquera, yeah.
La Junquera. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't try to pronounce any of the other words. I just will mess that up. So let's get into our conversation here, and thank you for taking your time with us for this and the Global Earth Repair Conference. So the first thing we're going to start with is what are the trends of climate change in your area, and how do you see things as they were, how they've been? I believe that you basically lived in that area most of your life or all of your life. So obviously you've seen what it was in the past, what it is now, and where do you think it's going in the future?
Yeah. Well, in my case, I've been living in the farm for already 7.5 years now, but my family has been managing it for a couple of generations. So we have a bit of a track record of how it has been changing over these centuries. And one of the biggest things is basically the temperature that is rising quite a lot. So summers are getting much longer than what they were before. Winters are, a lot less colder. Before the rain, the snow was a lot more common than what it is now. And the highest temperatures in the summer were a lot lower than what they are getting now. We still have fresh years like we used to, but the hot ones are getting more and more common in the area. The rainfall is also concentrating more, so the average rainfall, we see that the patterns haven't changed so much. If we check the total rain in the year, which is about 310 millimeters a year, but we see that it rains in less days, so it gets stronger events, which cause a lot of erosion, and it's a lot harder for the soil to infiltrate. And then another thing that it's maybe more the practices, the agricultural practices, farming practices than climate change, that is that by over-tilling and over-grazing, the amount of organic matter in soil is a lot lower. So also the capacity of the soil to hold that moisture of those strong rain events is lower. So in the generally, it's basically getting a lot drier and hotter.
I see. And it sounds like also, and we've kind of heard this in some of the other conversations, with these intense rains, as opposed to, and there's less rain, but when it comes, it's more intense. The farming practices also, not that there was probably a lot of erosion anyway going on in the farm fields, and to some degree that people could manage it or not manage it. But now when it's so intense, the farm field's even less capable of handling the rain.
Yeah. indeed.
Is that what's a change in practices that you would think that would happen to help to fix that, to stop the erosion, keep the soil healthy?
So there are a few things that happened to make it worse in about the 50s when machinery arrived. I think it happened in many parts of the world at the same time that the fields got bigger. So instead of just working on the flat, good fields, they were also plowed parts of the mountains, of the hills, and of the natural areas. Also, a lot of hedges, borders, and terraces were taken out because they were difficult, making difficult the work of the tractors. And that's when also the erosion rates got a lot higher. Before they were lower. What we've been doing, especially in the last years, to apply more regenerative practices to try to improve the land, is first trying to add more organic matter to the soil by using the compost we have in farm. Before we were selling it, now we are using all of it and putting it back on soil. It's the same in the case of our almond crops. We leave a ground cover that grows in the wet and colder months of the year, and then we incorporate in the ground as well to try to add some there. And in the case of the grains, we are also changing. We change the varieties to older varieties of grains that have a lot more straw than the other ones. And when we harvest, we shred all the straw and we leave it on the ground. In the end, it's not a lot because our harvests are a bit poor. So we have an average of 1,500 kilos per hectare of grains. But with this system, we are also having 1,500 kilos of straw per hectare that we are incorporating on the ground. So year after year, that's helping. The same time combined with swales on some plots and seal traps and ponds where we have some spaces that are suited for that combination of those things.
So actually you're growing the organic matter now within the crop itself as you went to the taller stalks, to the old heirloom varieties.
We are trying to, because basically we cannot get it from anywhere else. So we are trying to get it from the plots. I think it's a slower process, but it's also a process that we can afford.
Do you keep your own seed then? Do you, or do you have to buy that every year?
Generally, we keep it. We trade some with other farmers, and sometimes when we've repeated many times, we either trade it or sell it and buy another one.
I see. So with the direction and the trends that things are going, and it seems like, from what I understand, it's they're talking about desertification in the southeastern area of Spain. So what's the most needed adaptation, do you think, for the society down there, or for the farms? What is the most urgent adaptation that we need there?
Well, I think both, because one goes with the other, or one cannot go with the other. So I believe a lot in the 4 returns model that Commonland created. That it's the economic return, the social return, the environmental return, and the inspirational return. And I think you need those 4 to actually be able to make a change in society and to make a sustainable change that is going to last long. If you don't change and affect society and the economy, you cannot, I think, make a sustainable change in the environment. And the same way. And if you cannot make examples that are inspirational and inspire other people to imitate it, then it's not going to have a big impact. So I think we have to work on all of those 4 returns or 4 factors at the same time.
Right. And so now, in one of the other conversations we had too, we're talking about, if you can imagine, as the stress comes to Spain, and especially on the cities, is trying to get people to move out to the country. So if you have more people, is there a possibility of having an economic system, though, based on the small villages that used to be there generations ago? Would that help the situation?
Totally. I totally believe in that. I am trying in the farm to also do some repopulating like the area. And in our farm was a good example. I think it was one of those cases that there were about 100 people living in the farm and working on it until the 60s. Then everyone left when machinery arrived, because instead of 100 people and 60 mules to work the land, you just needed 3 people and 3 tractors, and that was it. And now, what the situation we had a few years ago is we had one full-time worker and a huge tractor, and that was it. Now we've make a big diversification of the crops. We've got like plant a lot of crops that are a lot more labor intensive, and we are involved in many projects, some of them running them ourselves, some of them just collaborating or participating in one way or another. And I can say that now in the farm, we are about 22 people living full time, and some are students and some are volunteers, but about half of that numbers are people that work in the farm directly or indirectly.
Mm-hmm. And so if we're using sustainable but also more modern practices, do you think that that village could probably grow enough food and sustain 100 people, again with the buildings of course and some rebuilding and that? Do you think that's possible in
I
the
think
area?
a lot more than 100.
Really?
Yes, it's a big farm. Yes, so I think it has enough land and enough potential to feed 100 people. There in the case we have some plots of grains that they can be irrigated because we have a spring of water, and we could grow a lot of vegetables, but it's difficult to find a market here to sell them. So we just put chickpeas or other things, and you can get maybe 3,000 kilos of chickpeas in a plot. But if we would have to put vegetables or wanted to put vegetables, we could get 40,000 kilos per hectare. And we have a few of those hectares that have that potential that if at one point we need to do that, we can definitely do it. We also grow more than 500,000 kilos of grain, so I think we can make enough bread for 100 people with that as well.
Right. And so enough room for a diversity of small livestock and grains and vegetables. You could have quite a community there working together. Kind of like basically like it used to be, I would guess, not to be too romantic, because there was a lot of work back then too, with mules and everything. That's amazing. But then,
I think,
go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. But I think before it was more mainly to survive a lot of the work of people. Like it was, I did the experiment on the first months living the farm, trying to do everything without technology. And in the end, you spend 10 hours a day just to be able to survive the day. If you have to go and get wood, go and get water, go and cook with the wood, and go and harvest the things and transport them, then in the end of the day, you've been working a lot, and you've just managed to cook, sleep, eat, and get warm. So there was not a lot of room for many more things. Also, with just one person is difficult. But I think in this case it could be enough to maintain the community, maintain the village, and be able to export to sell outside of the farm, and also to transform the products in the farm. I think that's the next goal we have, and that's something that can create a lot of jobs and a lot of value that can stay in the farm.
Mm-hmm. So right now, the way things are going with the future, things are. Do you see that the weather is going to become more extreme? And then you mentioned snow. I know that, even today here, it's the middle of April, and we just got 2 feet of snow again, and we have blizzard, and the roads are closed. This is Minnesota, but when I was there in Spain too, you had just had 2 feet of snow. It was like 2 years ago. So, and you mentioned that again. So, is the winter weather also extreme?
It is, but it changes a lot, and the temperature varies a lot between day and night. So right now, also the sun is hitting me right now, and we are maybe at 20 degrees. But tonight it snowed actually in the mountains that are nearby, and it rained in the farm, but it was below 0 degrees. So you have a very big change in temperature between that. And in the winter we get maybe I think more than 100 days of under 0 temperatures, like below freezing in the year. But it gets a bit warmer in the middle of winter, maybe 5-6 degrees. Sometimes it gets colder, sometimes warmer, but more or less that. And in the summer, we easily get to 30, sometimes 35, 38 degrees during the day. But still, at night it always gets colder because we are over 1,100 meters over the sea level.
Right. So our last question is then too with
the altiplano, it's a high plain.
Oh, right. Our last question then too is seeing how these extremes are happening. How do we, or what do you think are the motion should be, either for government or for society, even for the farmers, to avoid a tragedy in the next decades?
Well, that's a good question. I think movements of associations where people get together, like I think in the case of Alvelal, that's a good example. That is an association of 240 members, many. So I think Alvelal is a good example as well of how to do it by getting farmers that get together in associations and have like a social movement in that way, and group together and create examples that are inspirational for one another, so people know what they can copy, some like systems and examples that are close by to them.
Very well.
Thank you. So our last question was going to be then too, quickly, just about what's going on now in your farm, but also other areas. I know that you're quite active in the whole area, working. So what's going on with you personally in your activities?
Yeah. Well, I think in the farm there are quite a lot of things happening. I'm mainly focused on the extensive farming part of the growing the grains, the almonds, the aromatics, the pistachios, and a bit of the orchard and vegetable garden. But there are also other projects that, let's say, they use the space of the farm to develop the project, but are independently managed. Like it's the case of the ecosystem restoration camp that we collaborate and we help each other, but it's an independent project that they have 5 hectares in the farm that we rent out for €1 a year for 5 years. And if we're all happy, we'll continue the system. And they are creating an example of how to make a sustainable living, not only with all types of farming practices and restoring natural areas, but also with bioconstruction, with hosting workshops and courses in the future when they have the infrastructure finished, that it's almost there now. And yeah, hosting people to have experience, to raise awareness. I think it's a really interesting project. And also recently the case of the Regeneration Academy that now has 3 people working in it, that it's a project to have students. Now there are programs of 4 months, that there are 8 students in each program. They come to the farm and they develop their master thesis. They do a research and an internship in the farm. Some of them there's students that focus on swales, the ones that are from land and water management, for example, from a Dutch university from Wageningen. And there are others that like a marine biologist came to the middle of the Altiplano to do a research about the ponds and how is the life in the ponds, the biodiversity, the vegetation, what influences how that changes, how can we what can we do in the landscape to maintain that in the best way possible and to increase that biodiversity and that buffer effect on the area that we get from the ponds. And then we have also students that did research on sociology and how this movement within Alvelal happens, how is knowledge shared between farmers and between other practitioners and other people involved in this project.
Mm-hmm.
Very well.
That's amazing.
But thank you very much. We very much appreciate your time. You know, you're very busy there too, Alfonso. And I really would like to hear more about the programs as things move along. And hopefully we'll get back there soon. And of course, invite people too to, you know, keep up with the ERC. I know John will be speaking at this conference, John Liu.
Cool.
And hopefully there'll be some other people there from the ERC. So yeah, but it's wonderful what you're doing there and inspirational to hopefully many people in your area also, as much as it is to us.
Well, thanks a lot, Daniel, and I hope can see you soon near here.
Yes.
Sí, ha sido un placer también hablar contigo, Alfonso.
Muchas gracias, Regina.
Y bueno, ya te mandaremos el enlace cuando esté esto online y espero que disfrutes la conferencia.
Seguimos en contacto. Oye, enhorabuena por esta iniciativa y esta conferencia que suena muy, muy, muy interesante. A ver cómo va saliendo.
Vale.
Sí, de España viene gente bastante interesante, ya lo verás.
Vale, genial.
Gracias, Alfonso, por participar.
Bueno, un abrazo fuerte.
Hasta luego.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.